G'day guys, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about chipping in GS Pro. How do I chip? How do I judge the distances within 60 yards? And I've chosen 60 yards as a cutoff for me because 60 yards is where I start getting into my wedge matrix numbers. If you haven't watched my wedge matrix video, definitely check that out because that'll give you a good idea on wedge distances and how I use my different wedges to judge distances, not only in GS Pro, but also in the real world. This is something that started in the sim and now I use real world to actually judge the distances for my wedge shots. But today we're going to be talking about inside 60 yards. So how do I judge those distances? I'm going to head out to the GS Pro practice area. Definitely download this if you haven't done so already. But what I'm going to start with is little chip shots from just off the green. Guys, if you haven't done so already, please do subscribe to the channel. I do really appreciate everyone who's subscribed. And I also do have to give a big shout out and a big thank you to Burn G. Thank you so much for that super thanks for the putting video. I really do appreciate that, mate. Okay, but today we are talking about chipping and how to judge these distances on GS Pro. So let's get started with these short chip shots. So how do I judge the distance for this shot in GS Pro? Anything within, I'm going to say 14 yards of the hole, what I do is I take that number of yards and then I just call it feet. So for instance, this one's 9 yards. I'm going to call that 9 feet, and all I'm going to try and do in my sim room is now chip it and carry the ball 9 feet in my sim room. This works on stimp 12. I'm on stimp 12 at the moment. You can get away with it on stimp 11. Stimp 10, you need to add maybe a foot, and then stimp 13, take away about a foot. So for this shot, like I said, this is 9 yards. All I'm going to do is try and land this 9 feet in my sim room. So I know that my screen is 10 feet. So all I'm trying to do now is land this a foot short of my screen, and this should be the correct distance for this shot. Okay, that's a little hard, so that might go long. So that hit my screen, which is about an 11-foot carry, and as you see, the ball's gone past the hole. So let's try to do that shot again. And this time we'll try and land it at 9 feet. Okay, that's perfect. And as you can see, the distance is pretty good. So this will work up to, like I said, about 14 yards. Now, if you are using the metric system, I do apologize. You might have to think of a way you can do it using the metric system, but I do use the imperial system. Let's go out to 14 yards now. And I'm just going to try and land this 14 feet. And what you'll notice is, as I start to get past about 12 feet, this method doesn't really work. These balls will start coming up short. Okay, so let's try and land this 14 feet in my sim room, which is going to be about 2 foot up on my screen. Not too bad. It's coming up a little bit short, but overall that's pretty good. We'll go one more. A little bit harder there. That was about 15 feet. And it's come up a little short. So you can do that up to about, like I said, 12 yards, even 14 yards. I mean, those are acceptable shots. They're pretty good. But you've just got to be aware that as you get past that 12 to 14 yards, this method starts to not work. All right, let's go back a bit further. Right, I'm now at 60 yards. And if you've watched my wedge matrix video, this, for me, to land the ball 60 yards is when my left arm gets parallel to the ground with my 60-degree wedge. So why is this important? So I know that when I hit my lob wedge, when I have my feet close together, weight on the front foot, and I go back to where my left arm is parallel to the ground and swing through, the ball will carry 60 yards in GS Pro. And it also carries 60 yards in the real world as well. So it's a really good way of knowing your wedge distances. So let's do a shot. I'll just do that now. So before every shot, I go left arm parallel, get a feel for it. Okay, that's 59 yards. So I mean, pretty close to 60 yards. That is a feel. So my arm, I'm not sure, I'm going to watch it when I replay this video back. My left arm potentially went a bit further than parallel, but that feels like parallel to me. What you've got to now think about, so what I think about is tempo. Everything is tempo. So I'm taking the club back to a certain position that I feel, and then everything's tempo. That's how you're going to get consistency. You watch someone that's amazing with their wedges like Cam Smith, he always has really good consistent tempo in his swing. So that's my 60-yard shot. Let's talk about shots closer now, because that 60-yard feel becomes very important, and I'm going to explain. Okay, I've now got a 50-yard shot. So for this shot, I don't want to land at 50 yards because it's going to go past the hole. So I want to land this at about 45 yards. So how do I do that? So the way I do it is by using my 60-yard feel as a reference. So I know that that is going to go 60. And so to land at 45, I'm taking the club back to about there. If I take the club back to there, maintain that same tempo, it should carry 45 there or thereabouts and go close to that pin. So let's try and do that. I'll take it back. I'll again do a reference swing to there. And now it's all about just replicating that and keeping my tempo. Okay, pretty good. So 42.5 yards. And again, it's a little bit short. I didn't carry it the full 45 like I wanted to, but it's close enough and it's a pretty good shot, to be honest. So we've got 40 yards now. So the same thing, I'm going to try and hit this 35 yards there or thereabouts on the fly. So again, I'm going to use my 60-yard feel, my left arm parallel, as a reference point. I know my 45 was there, so for 35, I'm going to take it back to about there. I've got to have that same nice tempo, 35 yards as a feel. Okay, it's a little bit short. We've gone 31 yards, but it worked out and it's a pretty good shot. This is all going to take a lot of practice and it's going to take a lot of feel. I am using the same wedge. I'm using my 60-degree wedge, and I generally will use my 60-degree on all of these shots within 60 yards, unless there's a really obvious reason not to. Let's now go to 35 yards. This shot for me is very important because I'm trying to carry this 30 yards. I know that my left arm parallel is a 60-yard carry. So now all I'm doing is taking it halfway between the start point and my left arm parallel, keeping that same tempo, and this should carry 30 yards. Now, I did rush that swing a bit. I felt like I rushed that swing. My tempo was slightly off and therefore I carried it a bit too far. So we'll try that one again. So only taking it back to there. Nice smooth tempo. Much better swing and closer to our intended carry yardage. Right, let's talk about the next reference point that I use, because I do have a couple of other reference points. Okay, so another reference point that I have in my swing with these shots is when my club gets to parallel. So when my club, I've got the same setup, weight on my front foot, most of my weight on my front foot, hands pressed a little forward. So the other reference point I use is when my club actually gets to parallel. So when my club gets to just there, that for me is about 16 to 17 yards carry. So this should carry about 16 yards. Okay, 15 yards on the fly, so not bad. So that's another reference point I use. So I guess the theme of this is I've got two reference points. One where my club gets to parallel, and then another one halfway between address and my left arm parallel to the ground. That's my 30-yard shot. And then when my left arm's parallel to the ground, that's my 60-yard shot. Everything else, I'm just judging on the fly while I'm doing it. Whenever I do one of these shots in GS Pro or real life now, because I use this method in real life and it really has improved my wedge control. Whenever I do a swing, so say this shot here, 22 yards, that one went a little bit far. So I probably don't want to carry it 15. So let's try and carry this about 11 yards. So before I do any shot on GS Pro or in real life with my wedges, I will go back to where I think I should be taking the club back to. I'll get a mental image, a mental model in my head of where I want to take it back to, and then I hit the shot. So pretty good there. So that's how I do these shots, not only in GS Pro, but in real life. If you practice your wedges this way, what you'll find is, if you're anything like me, you'll tend to get pretty good at this. And when you go play on course, you will actually use this method on course. I really focus on carry distance numbers. Carry distance is everything for me, because then when you take this out on course, when you use this on GS Pro, depending on what they set the green firmness as, what the green speed is, if it's uphill, downhill, you can then judge these shots a lot easier because you know where you're going to land the ball and then it'll release out based on how quick the greens are. Okay, so what we'll do now is I'll just head out to one of my favorite courses to actually practice wedges on. So we'll go to local match and we're going to go to Flushing Meadows Pitch and Putt. And for the purpose of this, I'm just going to do auto putt fixed. We'll go Saturday pins. Stimp 12, that looks good. This is one of my favorite courses to practice wedges on, but what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to talk through my wedges and the shots I'll play. I do have, if you haven't watched the Wedge Matrix video, definitely check it out. I still have my chart. I'll try and put that on screen so you can see it. I've got my chart with my wedges that I use. I basically go 60 degree, 56, 52, pitching wedge 9-iron, and I do left arm parallel, 3/4 full, and then it gives me basically a matrix of all these yardages, carry yardages that I can use. But again, when we're talking about less than 60, that's when I start doing all of these partial shots. So why not use multiple wedges for these shots? You can. If you have enough time in practice, you can use all your different wedges and do all these different shots. However, for me, I find that just keeping the same wedge and just practicing with one wedge, I get a lot more consistent. Okay, so we've got the first hole, par 3 at Flushing Meadows. We've got 85 yards. So I'm just going to play a few holes and I'll just talk through what I'm going to do. So I've got a 3/4 60 degree swing that carries 79. So I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to hit it a little bit harder because I know that my 3/4 swing carries 79. It'll hit and release. So I'm going to try and carry this about 82. And I've absolutely nuked it. But that's good because that's going to give us a really good chip on the first hole. So I have 8 yards. I'm coming out of the rough, so it is going to hang it up a little bit. It is on a right slope and it's on an up slope. Now, because the actual angle you're going to hit this chip on, it's going to come out quite high. The actual slope doesn't really affect it unless it's like a ridiculous number. I am slightly on an upslope out of the rough, so it's going to take a bit of speed off. So for this shot, I'm thinking more about the break. I'm going to land it about, say there, maybe a little bit less. I'm going to land it about there. So now I'm trying to play the break as if this is rolling like a putt. So if I aim, say there, that looks pretty good. I have 8 yards, but it is slightly uphill. So I'm going to play this at about 9 yards as a feel. So now all I'm trying to do is land this 9 feet in my sim room. So let's try and do that. It might come up a little short because we're in the rough as well, but let's just try carry this 9 feet in my sim room. Okay, should be pretty much perfect. And it was. So pretty good for distance there. Okay, now we got a 46-yard shot. So I don't want to land this 46. So let's try and land this around 41 yards as a feel. So I do have my 60-yard reference. So I'll do that. And then I just want to land at about 40, which is just past my halfway. So we're going to say there, that's my feel. 41 yards. Okay, 41.5, so that's pretty good. And it was really good for distance, a little bit to the right. But the actual distance, the carry distance was spot on. All right, now we've got a 52-yard shot. It is tucked. So you look at this pin, the pin is tucked. So I'm gonna have to try and land this maybe just in the fringe at about 46 yards, call it. So 46 yards is our target carry. If anything, we'll err on being a little bit long. So 46 yards, again, that's my reference for 60. So about there should be pretty good for 46. 47 yards, so pretty good. And it's going to be another birdie. If you haven't downloaded this course, definitely download it because this is such a fun course and it's such a good course to practice your wedges on. 77 and the green slopes away. So to be honest, I probably want to land this about 70 yards. I do, thanks to my wedge matrix, have a 71-yard shot with my 56 degree. So I will be doing that. I'll be doing a left arm parallel with my 56. This should carry 71 yards on the dot and roll down to the pin. 73, so a little bit long. Oh, I thought that was going in. What a shot. And now we've got 53. So this is going to be about a 48-yard shot as a feel. So again, back to the 60 degree. Get the feel in my head, should be about there. And 48.8, and perfect for distance. Now, with this wedge matrix as well, I do have all of my numbers. I did show that, but what you could do is, I'm just using my 60 degree as a reference, so using my 60-yard shot. If you wanted to change the trajectory, if you wanted to hit lower shots, you can simply just get your 52 or your 56 and then get the same feels, just do your half swing to halve the distance essentially. But it's definitely something I would practice doing. I just gravitate to my 60 degree just because that's what I know and I'm comfortable with. But there's nothing stopping you from getting your 52, for instance, doing a half swing and halving the yardage. It's all going to depend on the actual shot, what you've got to carry, if there's a lot of green you got to work with, and all these other things. So this shot here, we got 64 yards, or 65, call it. So this is perfect for me. I'm just going to do my 60-yard shot with my 60 degree. Didn't hit that good. Not good tempo either. But it's not horrendous. I mean, I'm 8 yards off my carry distance. Quite a lot, but in the big scheme of things, I did hit the green and get a par, so it's not the end of the world. Okay, let me jump out of this now and I'll show you the final bit of practice that I do with my wedges. So if you go to practice and just go to the regular driving range, this is a really good feature to dial in your wedges and just to practice hitting different yardages. So once you're on the range, if you see this little icon here where my mouse is with those two arrows crossing each other, if you select that, it's going to bring up these two sliders. Now what these are is max distance and min distance. So let's set our max distance. In this case, I'm just going to practice with my 60 degree. So let's set it to 60 yards, and then we'll set our min distance to 22. And for the purpose of this, I'll do one shot. You do have 1, 3, and 5 shots as options. And what this is going to do is it's going to give you a random distance within those two yardages that you've set. And then you're going to choose whether you want 1, 3, or 5 shots from that same distance. So for me, I'll hit this 57-yard shot, and then it'll pick a completely random yardage within those two yardages, and I'll get another shot. And then it'll select a completely random yardage, and I'll get another shot. If you are practicing your wedges, I do recommend going to 3 or even 5 shots just to get the feel down. When you're first getting these feels, you do need to get a bit more repetition at the same yardage just to dial those feels in. Once you get good with your wedges, or you really start feeling confident, that's when you can select one, and now every shot is going to be a new yardage. So you're really going to have to think, you're really going to have to adapt to each yardage. Now, these are carry yardages I'm talking about. So 57 yards is actually 57 yards to the flag. I wouldn't want to carry it that far. For this shot, I'm going to think about 50 yards, maybe even 48 yards as a carry. That'll get me to where the ball's rolling out to 57. And you can change all of this in the settings. So we're stimp 12 at the moment. I've got the green firmness is normal. If you make that soft, or, change that, it's going to affect how far the ball actually lands and rolls out, as well as the stimp. So definitely play with those two options. But for me, I just leave it most of the time on normal and stimp 12, just because that's what I'm calibrated on. Okay, so we've got a 57-yard shot. Like I said, I want to land at about 48, and I'm just going to be doing the same thing. So 48 yards is a feel. Not the best contact, and that's 44 yards, so it's going to come up short. And now it's giving me a 30-yard shot. So for this shot, I'm just going to try and land at about 22 yards. Now I know my 16-yard shot is when my club's parallel, so I'm just going to go a little bit further than that. 24, so not bad. And how far is it going to roll out? This is the thing. It's going to roll out depending on, like I said, the green firmness and also the stimp. Generally for these shots, anything over about 30 yards, I get anywhere from 6 to 10 yards rollout, depending on the spin. Is it downhill? Is it into a hill? The ball will react to the conditions. So if you are hitting into an upslope, the ball's going to stop a lot quicker. Also, how much spin you generate, the actual loft and peak height your ball gets, it's all going to affect how much the ball rolls out. So this is something that you're going to have to go to this driving range or to the night range onto one of those greens because they're perfectly flat. This is slightly downhill. It's trial and error. You're just going to have to do trial and error, figure out your reference points, and then when you hit those reference points, how far the ball actually carries, and then how far it rolls out. If you write those numbers down or you keep them handy, then when you're on course, you'll have a reference to how far you have to hit every shot. Those are the practice tools I use. That's how I feel what yardage I'm going to hit. It does take a bit of practice. The more you do this, the better you'll get. Hope you guys enjoyed that. If you did, let me know. Any comments or questions, let me know down below, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Cheers.